Hello, Uganda. Good evening and welcome to this edition of the Hotseat on 933 KFM. I welcome you, our listeners across this beautiful country, the Pearl of Africa. My name is Patrick Kamara. Tonight, we shed a light on the East African communities of our region. And my guests are gentlemen who understand this region like the back of their hand. We'll be trying to see, since that vision of having the East African community and a politically federated region, what has happened, what have been the achievements, what have been the challenges. And we're going to look and go through in the footsteps of a great man of Africa, Julius Kambarage Nyerere. There's going to be a team that will be going to Butiama. And Butiama happens to be the birthplace of Julius Nyerere. They are tracing the roots of this man because he espoused so many ideas of a country or a region that is united, and indeed Africa that is united. Let me introduce my guest this evening. I have a Uganda People's Congress stalwart, a Pan-Africanist, Mr. Joseph Ochiano. Thank you so much for joining us, Joseph. Good evening, sir.
Pleasure to be here. It's a long time, but it's an important day for me. It's an important day for me because it's an important day for Ugandans.
It's on the eve of the independence.
This is the eve of the independence. In fact, it's the day when independence was effected. But it is also the day in which, when we lost the founding president of the Republic of Uganda, Milton Obote, in a very cheeky way, decided to pass on this exactly the same day, which is 2005. So
my other guest in the studio is a Group CEO, Africa Mashariki Fest, Dr. Tendo Ronex Kisembo. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Kisembo.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a while or so, and I appreciate it.
Let me begin with you, Dr. Kisembo. What is Africa Mashariki Fest? And I can see you donning a T-shirt of hashtag 20 Butiama 2024. Bring us to speed on this.
Thank you so much. Africa Mashariki Fest is a regional youth organization that is affiliated to the East African Community Secretariat. We basically engage the young people across the region to promote and understand region integration using art and sports. We began this journey on the 8th of October 2014. So this year we'll be marking 10 years ever since we officially launched this project at Mandela National Stadium. Interestingly, we share a birthday with the SGR project because that morning of 8th October 2014, heads of state from the East African community converged at Speaker Resort Munyonyo to launch the SGR project.
Please don't remind me that, because I remember they took a picture of a project that was never to be. Mm-hmm. In fact, since 2014, it's now 2024, it has been 10 years of embarrassment as far as that project is concerned.
Well, I would have a slightly
Dr.
different
Kisembo, you're just being modest, but just being humble, but that's the fact.
No, well, like I wanted to submit that when you look at the side of Kenya, yes, 2014 to date, 10 years, but the SGR project on the Kenyan side, the project is on from Mombasa to Nairobi, that section from Nairobi to Naivasha, are fully operational. We would now maybe zero it to Uganda, that the project ends in Naivasha, and we haven't probably taken course on our side when our colleagues are already enjoying the services of SGR.
I want to tell you, you're sharing a birthday with a very funny day, because on a very funny day, because on that day, a white elephant was launched. Mr. Joseph Ochiano, these seem to be robust, aggressive, vibrant young people of East Africa. Do you think the young people of East Africa are really together? Do they understand the Pan-Africanism agenda? Do they understand the East African agenda? Are they working with their leaders? Are they ahead of them, or they're just doing their own stuff?
I honestly don't know when you chose to invite me tonight to share this platform, and particularly this date. In fact, I didn't really contextualize it. It's extremely important. As you know, I boast as amongst the youngsters of the last 40, 50 years who were really, really, really at the fingertips, East Africanists, at the fingertips, Africanists, and at the fingertips, Pan-Africanists, and in practice, African liberation fighters, except for throwing bombs in the streets. We're totally committed to the liberation struggles in Southern Africa. We proudly sang Nyerere, we proudly sang Obote, we proudly sang Kaunda, we proudly sang Oliver Tambo, and we proudly sang a liberation for Southern Africa now, total independence for Africa now. Some of those songs, as early as our schools, after the time in which in the universities, Patrick, I led a demonstration in 1986, actually, when Samora Machel was killed by Boers. I was actually deputy head of delegation, but we led a demonstration from Makerere demanding that Mr. Museveni was delaying to issue a statement on the killing of Samora Machel. That is how cautious then we were about some of these issues. Okay, fast forward to contextualize very quickly. Fast forward to date. I genuinely, with the many young people, including a meeting I'm coming from right now with a young teacher, I actually don't know how many of them appreciate the issues that we're talking about. So that fundamentally scares me, worries me, hence part of my job. But to realize that actually that this very specific group of young people consciously doing that, maybe I'm slightly embarrassed that I've not been a party to that as yet. But to answer your question, it is a job that badly needs to be done. It's extremely urgent. Where we sunk, I genuinely don't know. It's urgent because absolutely in the interest of the young people in this country, young people of this region, young people of this continent, to wake up, recontextualize the map of our continent, revisit the founding principles of our founding parents, revisit the founding values and ideologies of the leaders of that time, help make sure that post today, as tomorrow we look at Uganda's marking independence, where have you been? You were slightly joking about the SGR. I think our founding parents would find it completely unacceptable that the project is
let me get back, Dr. Kisembo. I know you mean well. I know this is something big. But the young people you're working with today, with all respect, I don't think they're walking in step with you. I think they're out of step because I think they're frustrated with our leaders. If you see the Gen Z in Nairobi, what they're doing then, if you see the youth in Kampala, what they're doing then, I do not think they are, inspired by the elders who are running the show. So the seeds of unity that you're sowing, Dr. Kisembo, they must be, falling on barren ground.
Well, I beg to differ a bit, much as I also appreciate that to some extent your submission is genuine. Now, what happens is that when you look at the current composition of the summit and the leadership at the EAC Secretariat and the provision of the treaty for the establishment of the EAC, which provides for a private, people-centered, private sector-led integration. Now, when you ask the role of the youth, the young people in the integration process is purely one thing. You're right. Now, we cannot sit back. We can't sit back and say things should be left to the leaders at the summit. These leaders, first of all, President Museveni, the late Daniel Arap Moi, the late Benjamin Mkapa, and Mzee Mwinyi, did a wonderful thing to revive the integration. And now we are talking of 25 years down the road. I was having a chat yesterday with, if you may, General Muntu. General Muntu led me into the East African community in 2006. I volunteered at the Secretariat. Now we're trying to share a few things that, look, the first community, 1967 to 77, we're talking about the community of the Mwalimu Nyerere, Mzee Obote, and the Mzee Jomo Kenyatta. It lasted 10 years, but they achieved so much compared to the 25-year journey of the revived East African community. And this now bothers us as young people. Now, this is why we've chosen on the 14th of October to go to Butiama, Mwalimu Nyerere's birthplace and resting ground, to sit down and take stock of the 25-year journey. What have we achieved vis-a-vis the 10 years the initial community lasted? These were 3 partner states. We now boast of 8 partner states. Yes, we've increased the landmass, population, market, but what is there to write home about the integration agenda currently? As we speak now, there are borders of some countries which are blocked. They are closed. You wake up today, because I'm not in good terms with you, Comrade Kamara, I choose to block the border. What happens to the provisions of the treaty and the spirit of the framers of the integration? So I had a privilege, if you may, on the 10th of last month, to have a one-on-one with His Excellency the President of the Republic here in Uganda. And I want to share something that touched my heart so much when he told me that as you pursue this journey, just know that this is a matter of life and death. And number two, avoid emotions and sentiments. Frustrations along the way are many. And certainly, I've been at this at a personal level. From the year 2006, I've committed my life, my energy, my resources, and everything to promoting awareness. In the community, we've done so much. And one of the milestones that I really look at, in the year 2016, my brother, we had the Olympics in Brazil. I witnessed President Museveni handing over a flag, Uganda flag, to Stephen Kiprotich as the captain of Team Uganda. The same happened with the Uhuru Kenyatta, President Magufuli, and others. We went to Rio. But before we left here, I had the chance to share with His Excellency, and I asked, now, if we talk of promoting the integration and marketing East Africa as a single tourism destination, why don't we figure out a possibility of flagging a team from East Africa having the East African flag? I took the initiative. His Excellency funded that trip. I led the team to Brazil, and we carried the East African flag. So when a Kenyan was competing, we had the East Africans cheering him on. When a Tanzanian was in the ring boxing, Ugandans, Kenyans, Tanzanians were there to cheer him on. Because ultimately, a win for Tanzania is a win for East Africa. And interestingly, many tourists come to Kenya to see how these world marathoners, what do they eat? How is the weather like?
To know what's the trick.
Yes.
Let me come back to Dr. Cheno. Well, I think he's on the right trajectory. If only there could be a momentum that can come with big numbers of young people. After all, the region is largely young people. What do you see as the bottlenecks? Because we have been on this journey for quite some time. Since it was revived with President Moi, I think it was also Benjamin Mkapa and Yoweri Museveni.
It's politics and it's leadership, and it's the absence of both. Amazingly, part of the preamble of this, if they're seeking my advice, and I think they need to urgently review that if they're doing it in my names, that an integration of East Africa which is private sector led. You're giving it to business. The founding values of the continent of Africa was to create an enabling environment for all African peoples to come as identities together first, attain a political integration both in practice and in their minds, holistic, and then say where are our resources, mobilize our resources strategically and in a manner in which we're able to emancipate our peoples, and at that stage then the African continent, the African peoples as an identity, as a group, as an, therefore as an economic identity, can have a conversation with everybody else. That is what is absent. It's not surprising that the first 10 years of the initial East African community achieved so much because it had the political leadership. It was ideologically driven. It was very clear. It was visionable. But at the same time, it also had the leadership. And the leadership here is not simplistically an individual, but it's a holistic group of ideas and people. So the three leaders were there. At this material time, yes, we're 8. But we're 8, who are we? You go to an average school, the nearest school to these studios. I don't know how many of them, how many young secondary school students, for instance, will tell you how many members of this African community we have. So politics went absolutely wrong, and with the absence of leadership, where the leadership seems to be one in which there are much more individual interests or strategic, chauvinist interests, it's not surprising that we're where we are.
Before we take a break, though, I can't fail to notice that at least in some areas, for example, in the areas of entertainment, East Africans seem to be united. You can play a song of Jose Chameleon and everybody will be singing along, understanding the song across the region.
Emotive commonality.
You can play a song of Diamond Platnumz and everybody will follow. You can put a comic show of Felix Omondi and everybody will understand. It appears the young people through the entertainment have gone miles ahead from the politicians. Gentlemen, we're going to take a break. Welcome back to 933 KFM, and this is the Hot Seat. My name is Patrick Amar. My guest tonight, I have Mr. Joseph Otieno, Pan-Africanist and UPC stalwart. We have Dr. Tendo Ronix Kisembo, Group CEO, Africa Mashariki Fest, and we're discussing the unity of the East African community, the march towards a political federation that has been elusive for many decades. And it appears now the leaders have tried to re-energize. I even know there was a department of that's supposed to quicken the process. I'm forgetting the word.
To fast track.
Yeah,
Yes.
or fast tracking.
Yes.
But even the fast tracking itself seems to have been on a slow motion as well. Let me ask this question, because I had asked you this earlier of Mike. Tanzania is such a crucial partner state in the East African project. I mean, the Secretariat is in Tanzania. Julius Nyerere was Tanzanian. Tanzania today is perhaps East Africa's biggest economy. But in my own view, it appears Tanzania is now reluctant on this East African agenda. Your take?
I think I would say it's probably the fear of what I would call the unknown. I stayed in Arusha for 2 years, 2007, 2008. One of the issues I found is that most Tanzanians, or the government in Tanzania, seem not to be very comfortable with the provisions of the 2 pillars of the treaty for the establishment of the EAC. That's the Customs Union and the Common Market Protocol, where we have free movement of people, goods and services, and the right to residence. Now, Tanzanians look at themselves as a society that is
sort of closed in.
Yes, closed in and opening up. The treaty provides for partner states opening up so that we can freely engage. You have products in Uganda, you can sell them in Tanzania freely. You want to go and establish your company in Tanzania. First of all, when you go there and register a company, the treaty provides for a right of residency because you have business there. Now, Tanzanians are not very comfortable with that. And this is something that has persistently been bothering us. And one of the reasons, one of the key points we want to discuss on the 14th is the issue of the national ID. 25 years down the road, the United Republic of Tanzania does not allow any East African to access their land or their borders without a passport. Now, that is already a hindrance to the spirit and the provision of the treaty for the establishment.
But economically today, Tanzania is benefiting from the East African common market than most of the countries. In fact, I think they have balanced their trade or even gone with us, and they are on our heels, the Democratic Republic of Congo being the #1 business partner with the Congo. So if you make a case for them, they have benefited more in the last couple of years than any other region in another country.
The fear that I've witnessed firsthand, first of all, lies with employment and land ownership. These two scare the hell out of most Tanzanians. I would say that respectively. Because one, I remember in 2007, a scenario happened where a head of state had to order for the expulsion, or what was the right word I should use? The then
of the Bararo in northern Tanzania.
First of all, there was a Kenyan general manager of one of the biggest hotels in Tanzania, and now here is the head of state who visits that hotel and wants to know who the GM is, and is introduced that okay, it's so and so, and says from where? From Kenya. Don't we have somebody who can do such a job here? So tomorrow morning, I don't need you in the country. Now, such a spirit, we have so many Kenyans here in the hospitality industry, in other engineering, the construction industry, and other sectors. We have so many Tanzanians doing business here freely. Uganda is a free country. Our colleagues on the other side seem to be reserved, very protective.
See, in their reservation, Tanzania has gone like 20 years ahead of us now. So maybe they have a point because we have missed ourselves. In their reservation, Mr. Cheno, Tanzania has taken miles ahead of us. So there's something we have to learn. Maybe we don't have to rush things. And if you look at the CGR, look at everything is limbs, their infrastructure development, it's another level.
And it started from somewhere.
So these guys, they have a case to say, wait a minute, we know how to do these things, we can do them better. There's nothing you can teach us.
Aspects of Tanzania's caution are clear, possibly not particularly good for the spirit of the day-to-day. But that said, if you look at my continued arguments around this matter over the years, it was that the original East African three East African community member states had their very fantastic relationships as they built themselves. The collapse of the East African community, when we are now starting with a new organization as refounded, I'm not quite sure whether the then new leaders addressed the underlying issues, including some of the suspicions, mutual suspicions and concerns of the respective member states. In any case, part of the things about Tanzanians, not making it very political, is the fact that these guys have got their own cultures and traditions as a peoples, which is quite identical. Bringing those together means that that Uganda also needs to show some good manners. Part of the argument which I'll bring forward is Tanzania's more recent one, actually the last 10 years, is not for them to blame. When we actually coming together as part of convergency, the conversation had been that looking at the integration, we needed to review our constitutions. Of all the East African nation states, I'm not sure about Somalia, it's only Uganda which fathers the most anxious leader of integration, the oldest member of the integration, but for which we do not have time limits. So really, if then we do not have a political system that chimes together with the South African community, and you look at our contextual history, the mild average Tanzanian has got a right to say that, well, perhaps either we are going to export bad manners to Tanzania, or perhaps even with respect to the question of business, that maybe Tanzania may not necessarily be going to benefit very much from this integration.
Okay, I want to keep also going to the whole meaning of going to Butiama. So when you meet the young people who are going to converge in Butiama, what kind of people are going to be there, by the way? And then what kind of conversation are you going to have, and in what setting?
Well, we have invited people from different sectors, political leaders, academicians, private sector, security agencies from all partner states. And the response is good, the confirmation is good. Also, the Secretary Generals of the ruling parties in the respective partner states. We also extended a bit. We're expecting the Secretary General of Frelimo, ZANU-PF and ANC, then SPLM. SPLM is one that confirmed yesterday to be part of this discussion. We intend to have a genuine discussion reflecting on the 25-year journey of the revived East African community, and we ask ourselves, what is there to write home? What is there to make us feel proud that we are benefiting as ordinary people from the integration? And the interesting bit is that we've invited the three founding mothers, Mama Miri Obote, Mama Ngina Kenyatta, and our host, Mama Maria Nyerere. They will be there with us, confirmed. We will be with them. We want to ask them, how were things done by the founding fathers? What do we need to do right? If I may share with the listeners, I've had the privilege of sitting down with these three founding mothers, and they share different sentiments about the whole momentum of speed of integrating more partner states into the East African community. They're like, wait a minute.
They do.
If we had consolidated the original three after the revival, and we went ahead to have, as the roadmap had been drawn, this year 2024, as per the treaty, the Monetary Union Protocol would be actualized. What was envisioned in the treaty in 1999 meant that 2024, Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania would be using a single currency.
Actually, that was supposed to happen in 2013.
Yes. No, the treaty provides for the monetary union to be actualized in 2024. 2024.
Well, if you look at the original plan,
yes,
was the common market around 2020, the customs union first, the common market, and the monetary union, and then the political federation. By now, we would have gotten into
political federation. Now,
what I remember, we were like 10 years behind.
The unfortunate bit, you mentioned something earlier about an attempt to fast track a political federation. That was between 2006, 2008.
But you realize you cannot go. The federation was supposed to be the last stage from the customs union, the common market, monetary union, and then the political federation.
And I think it was a deliberate move by the framers. Let's first of all, because with the common market and the customs union, this targets the ordinary mwananchi.
Yeah.
And that's the spirit. The customs union.
Now, Ochieno, if you remember, Uganda was struggling the other day to do business with Rwanda. Uganda was struggling to sell her maize to South Sudan. Uganda was struggling to sell her milk, her eggs, and chicken. and posho in Kenya, and sugar. President Yoweri Museveni has to literally beg by then President Uhuru Kenyatta and now Ruto to accept the sugar and milk to be sold in Kenya. And yet we're supposed to be in the East African common market.
And Tanzania is watching. In a way, it's part of the broader conversation.
And Tanzania was expelling Benyankore herdsmen from Isingiro just across the border to go, even when they are facing a drought.
That is why the founding mothers make the argument that I have always been, and we're linking up to this. And I say I in the sense that we've had this conversations, except possibly on your program here. And that is that away from the 3 founding East African member states, we needed to have consolidated first, number one. Number two, even in that consolidation, you need to go through the process of what comes first, what comes next, what comes second. And at that stage, when do you then begin to reconnect, to bring in people, other nation states? And when you bring in other nation states, you begin to use what the European Union used as what they call convergence criteria.
Yes.
So in other words, then, if you're going to pick up a new entrant, in this case, either Rwanda or Congo, they must meet a certain specific criteria. What is their level of, what is their constitutional setup? What's the economic situation? What are their interest rate policies? What are their programs on inward investments? What are the human rights issues? That was the standard. Now, in any case, actually, Patrick, I feel sad because the European Union, then the European Economic Community, learned from us, and I was privileged to have read a text by the then British Prime Minister Ted Heath, who said actually they picked the part of the blueprint from the then East African Community, which was hardly 3 years old as of 1970-71 when they were organized into to overthrow a government at the time. But number one. Number two, they also said, and they made an important argument, that in the event that the East African Community succeeded, they were going to be too powerful for us to penetrate. Now, if then that is the case, then you would see where Tanzania is. If Tanzania recognizes that, well, there's a path which is being led by people whose agenda may not necessarily be consistent with ours, who rather sort out our independence and focus on our peoples, and then catch up with everybody else as we go.
Dr. Tendo Ronex Sembo and Joseph Otieno. Gentlemen, we're going to take a break, and the Hot Seat will be right back. Welcome back to 933 KFM, and this is the Hot Seat. My name is Patrick Amara. My guests tonight are Dr. Tendo Ronex Kisembo, Group CEO, Africa Mashariki Fest, and Mr. Joseph Otieno, Pan-Africanist and Uganda People's Congress member. And we're discussing the importance of the East African community, the journey towards a political federation, and we have now a movement called hashtag 20 Butiama 2024, and young people will be meeting in Butiama, which is the birthplace of Julius Kambarage Nyerere. No, after that, what is going to come out of this Butiama? What should we see?
Thank you very much, Patrick. On the 14th of October, that is Monday next week, it's Nyerere Day in Tanzania. We are going to be commemorating 25 years after the passing of Mwalimu Julius Nyerere, but equally marking 25 years of the revived East African community. We're now 25 years old as a community.
That's a quarter of a century.
Now, we deliberately, away from visiting the museum and the ancestral home and also attending a mass, you know there is a canonization process for Mwalimu Nyerere going on. So first thing in the morning, there is a mass in Butiama Cathedral, which will be attended by everyone. After the mass, those who will go with us will now take a tour of the ancestral home and later the museum. Then in the afternoon, we are going to be live on KBC, UBC, and TBC, live from Butiama. We have a dialogue where we've invited different stakeholders of different generations. Now here, we are going to come up with what we are calling the Butiama Accord, which is Azimio la Butiama in Kiswahili. We are going to make our demands on paper, and all participants are going to append their signatures on this document. We, as young people in the community, this is how we look at the integration journey vis-a-vis how the current political leadership is taking us. We have to now go to Arusha in December when the summit convenes through the Secretary General of the Secretariat and submit our accord, which will have demands. We aren't going to be like the Gen Zs in Kenya who chose to hit the streets. We are doing it rather in a civil kind of way, but our demands will be put on paper and we shall sign, go and submit them to the summit, to all the 8 heads of state. The unfortunate bit, though, is that I have the privilege as always to be attending these summits every time they convene in Arusha. It beats my understanding, without mentioning the countries, but again, not to miss my words. A country like DRC Congo, which has just been admitted into the community, and other countries in the partner states that have chosen not to attend the summit. Now, this is a meeting of heads of state of the community. And for it has become a habit that you only send in your prime minister, you send in your minister to come and sit with your colleagues, heads of state, to deliberate on the future of this community.
Okay, if you can pause there. Maybe the East African community group leaders were too ambitious to admit whoever was applying to come in so fast. And you talked about it earlier, about the things that the criteria to follow.
That was
and perhaps that could also be our Achilles heel now.
That was my point. And I'm just concerned because I don't know, in terms of the blueprints for the young people, amongst the key points they're going to raise. I hope that you have an idea about the draft. And in any case, actually, it needs to be a radical draft that actually hits at the pinch of the whole thing. And I hope, as part of that draft, it addresses the thinking of Mwalimu Nyerere leading to independence, even pre-independence. And that it leads to the thinking of Milton Obote leading to independence and pre-independence. And it leads into the thinking of, indeed, Jomo Kenyatta. But the first two, because particularly the first two known East Africans, East Africans and East African Federationists, without prejudice. And that's on the record. So unless we address the founding values and the founding ideals of the East African community, we will not be able to appreciate why and where we are, which links back to the point that Patrick raised. How this became the East African 8, when, as I said, you can go to an average high school student, A-level student, possibly even an average student of political science university around town, and you'll get only 50% of them being able to tell you that they're actually 8 member states, is, in my opinion, in part shambolic. But on the other, it means that, Dr. Kasembo, that you're dealing actually with the symptoms, that while you're picking the young people, going around with them on this, at the core of this, some of these are part of the conversation that we have at a national political discourse. Patrick, I had suggested as part of the convergence criteria that these must be matters of elections in political parties across the member states, but also must be a part of a conversation in the manifesto commitments of those intending them. Precisely, because it has got major constitutional implications. It's got major sovereignty implications. And it's not surprising that Tanzania then would be very concerned. Elections are coming next year. How many political parties, mainstream political parties in Uganda, are having conversations saying that on a position on East Africa, are we reducing the number or increasing the number? These are matters that need to be discussed critically. It is only through that you will be involving the average citizenry. But for the business that you end up with, and this is thrown as a matter of a bill in Parliament, as a by the way, and from there on, heads of state are meeting. It's not surprising that in this case, Adia Congo is possibly taking it as it is. Of course, we've already named them. But as I said, even from my perspective, when I heard that they were to join, I had no clue, because I genuinely don't know the political argument, because it's about political integration. The political arguments being then made by Congo. Did the Congolese authorities go to their citizens? I would suggest that a future East African integration, if I was a party to it, I would demand that the referenda to be held in the respective nation states before
they are admitted.
Before they are admitted.
Actually,
so that you can know it's people-centered.
Precisely. If I may interject a bit, when the first attempt to fast-track a political federation happened, I was in Arusha. Actually, what happened in Tanzania, Kenya was very fast to embrace the idea. Uganda did the same. But Tanzania said, wait a minute, we need to consult our people. And that time, that was during the leadership of His Excellency President Jakaya Mrisho Kikwete. Said, wait a minute, let's consult our people. In so they say, mbona haraka sana?
Why are you in a hurry?
Yes, why are we in a hurry? Hebu tuulize watu wetu wanasemaje. And that really brought the whole vibe then of fast-tracking the political federation to now what we are having, and we're not comfortable with it.
So President Kikwete was right.
We're not talking about from a political federation. We're not talking of a confederation. Okay? Right now, the leadership at the summit have agreed on pursuing a confederation as opposed to the envisioned federation.
Because they don't want to let go of the sovereignty of the power. Everybody is what.
And the late General Tumwene used to share with me something interesting that it's until our leaders agree to cede certain powers. And number two, let's look at this icon called Mwalimu Julius Nyerere. You have the opportunity for your country to declare herself independent. And you're like, wait a minute. Let's wait for Kenya and Uganda to also get independent. Now, we join the three to be one. And on record, I have a clip of him speaking, saying that he doesn't mind being sent to any country, whether UN, as an ambassador. He never envisioned or he never pushed this so that he can become the head of the politically federated.
That man was true icon, very different from the rest. No wonder that's why we're celebrating him. No wonder there's a journey for canonization of the same man, because he was ahead of his time. Perhaps he was an exceptional guy. So the others, we were still struggling. Gentlemen, we're going to take a break. And when we come back, my producer will open the line so that we hear what the Ugandan people are saying on the issue of the East African agenda. Welcome back to 933 KFM, and this is the Hot Seat. My name is Patrick Amara. My guest this evening, I have Dr. Joseph Othiano, Pan-Africanist. I have Dr. Tendo Kironis Kesembo, Group CEO, Africa, Mashariki Fest. And we're discussing about the journey of the East African community. I have Ugandans online, and they want to contribute. And so let me go with the very first person online. Hello.
Yes, Mr. Patrick.
Yes, sir.
Thanks for that show.
You're welcome. So what's your name and where are you calling from, and what's your take tonight?
Okay, my name is Live Inspector.
Okay.
Yeah, my take is that I want the current of state that's right to make sure we have a common market, a common community, but we have to agree that, as what you said, the speed is very slow. Implementing the policies, it has become a very big issue. That's why now we are not feeling it. Like we feel like I'm only Uganda. The word East African community is like a portrait, like something written on a billboard. But everybody has not been impacted.
All right, you made your point. You cannot feel it. You don't feel it. You want to feel the East African community project into. People need to buy into it, understand it. But there's something I love is about the ceremonies wherever we go. Every time I hear the East African anthem.
Hello, Samara.
Yes, I have another caller. Your name and where are you calling from?
Sam Kaizi.
Sam Kaizi, where are you calling from?
Kampala.
All right.
I want to assure you, why are you seeing Tanzanians developing cold feet to integrate? Eh? Are we a good example? Can you change leadership? What is the level of corruption? If you have civilians studying in army courts, staying there 4 years, 5 years, the level of corruption, the nepotism. No, it's like wanting to get a master's degree when you don't have a diploma. These people are not adding value. Let us integrate with our music business like the chameleon we talk about. Otherwise, we are just wasting our money. People are not impressed by Uganda. You remember this leader of opposition of Kenya, there's a tweet going around, a clip, that Kenya should be benchmarking with the best. And among the people she cast not to benchmark with Uganda was Nkurube. So we're not impressed. Nobody wants to associate with chaff.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Kaizi, for your views. Let me pick another caller. Hello. Hello. I have a caller line. Hello. Okay. You can call again. Kaizi was not very kind. But I think also he's speaking his mind, and that's what he has been able to see. Sometimes, over the weekend, there were very explosive statements coming from the Chief of Defense Forces of Uganda on a partner state, a world power. Before that, there was another tweet that went, and he said, I will capture Kenya in 2 weeks. And all that, and this is just an individual. We're talking about the Chief of Defense Forces. So our brothers in the region, sometimes they can say, wait a minute.
Hello,
we're going to integrate with these guys. Hello, I have a call line.
Good evening.
Good evening. What's your name and where are you calling from?
James, good evening to those guys that you brought in the studio.
Thank you. Go right ahead, sir.
Patrick, do you think that these Ugandan elites that are running some of these things are just people who are very good at talking, but they never put anything into practice? Because honestly speaking, the talks are sweet, but it's been 10 years ever since. Nothing has happened. Yesterday I had Professor Sulva. He's talking like as if he's tired. He has tried to do a lot of things that are good for this country, but they never come to maturity. It looks like we are good at talking, we yap a lot, but we never do anything. We never achieve, we never get to anything done. The SGA, this railway thing, the other countries are enjoying. Where is our Uganda? I was seeing a WhatsApp thing here showing the train in Kenya, the train in Tanzania, and then they showed this one of Uganda here in where you get
the Nalukolongo one.
The first class.
And then they showed the first class of the way you get it. Okay, thank you very much. What do you make of these callers and their submission, Dr. Kisembo?
I think what Mr. Kaizi said was spot on. Tanzania is developing of a cold feet towards the whole East African agenda. I don't buy into it, though, because they have to learn a lot from the founding father. Because bear in mind that the Tanzania is host to the Secretariat, and bear in mind that Mwalimu Nyerere, the founding father of Tanzania, is also the champion of the East African community integration. The leadership of CCM need to do quite a lot in terms of engaging other leaders to see that they can refocus towards the aspirations of Mwalimu Julius Nyerere. That's my thinking. But the fear of the unknown. And number two, there is a challenge. Most East African partner states tend to take a back seat because they seem to think that Kenya and probably Uganda would benefit more, or Kenya and Tanzania would benefit more from this thing called integration. Most of these other partner states are landlocked, and all our imports and exports have to go through either Mombasa or Dar es Salaam. So by default, they seem to be getting quite a lot from the integration. And now, a country like Burundi and South Sudan, if you task them to be paying the same amount of money as their membership fees to the Secretariat, now, where does that leave them? Because they will sit back and say, wait a minute.
What are we getting?
What are we getting from this community? And that now takes us back to what we shared earlier, that our leaders ought to have paused a bit to say, can we first consolidate the nuclear family? I made a statement on KBC last week when I was in Nairobi. And I said, if you are a family, mother, father, and a child, and you just wake up from nowhere and you say, all your family friends from the village and everyone come home, it is guaranteed you are going to starve because a loaf of bread won't be enough anymore. That's, to me, that's the perspective in which I'm looking at this whole thing of rushing to have more members into the family called East Africa. Whereas we talk about a widened market. Granted, what is this market? Where is this market?
You need to streamline, you need to consolidate, you need to develop a thing so that people can just be fighting to join with conditions, with some criteria, like Mr. Chono is saying, that have to fulfill.
That's absolutely correct. But also the other thing is that...
But it doesn't mean that we're any better anyway.
No, of course not. And in any case, actually, the Mwalimu Nyerere of 1963, 1964, 65, if he returned today, we would not find the Uganda that it was then, nor would he find the Kenya that it was, nor would he actually find the Congo that it is today. So those are contexts that we must put in place. So it's not surprising, therefore, that the cold feet is coming from there. But part of the other contradiction...
Let me just... this person has been online for quite some time. Let me pick just one more caller. I have a call online. Hello.
Yes, Mr. Kamara, good evening.
Good evening, sir.
Thank you very much for the show. I'm Okelo Stephen calling from Biogerere.
Okay, can you make it very brief, Stephen?
Yes, sir. You see, statement of General Mosi. Mosi knows that he is on power. He can say anything he wants to say, but he doesn't know the repercussions. Goes back to the citizens of this country, which is very bad to get a problem with our neighbors. I only talk on Kenya within 2 weeks. This statement is not good for the country. Over Uganda, it cannot be lead a civilian. Oh, what is that? But it is not good anyway. Thank you very much.
I understand, Steve. As far as that gentleman is concerned, sometimes I'm lost for words.
Yes. So in any case, that's exactly what I'm saying. So if you look at Nyerere and you look at Nyerere family and you look at their politics and you look at their posture, and you look at what's happening in Uganda, you look at what's happening and has happened in Kenya, it's not surprising that the Tanzanians would be rather shy about this.
Joseph, our time is out. Let me ask you in less than a minute to give us your parting shot.
No, I just hope that this conversation about East Africa is redoubled because it's important, it's urgent, but I hope that there's an ideological context put into it. I hope there is much more mainstream politics, not partisan politics, but politics of the identity question of Africa and the challenges facing the continent, and indeed if you like, the national security challenge this continent faces unless we're able to sort it ourselves.
I think all the political parties in Africa ought to have it as part of the agenda.
Yes, but that said, political parties that
believe in it.
Political parties that are right.
It shouldn't be an area where we have to oppose each other.
No, but I mean,
for me, it's an existential issue.
Political parties that are right wing will have a slightly different view, so we can't be compelled. But mainstream progressive left political parties that take African identity at the center must be part of the conversation.
Dr. Kisembo, your parting shot very briefly.
As young people, we believe there is urgent need to domesticate the integration gospel to the ordinary people. And that can only be achieved when young people are empowered, given the platform to also take charge, when we are learning, of course, from the existing leaders.
All right. Dr. Tendo Ronex Kisembo, Group CEO, Africa Mashariki Fest, thank you so much for your time.
Welcome.
Mr. Joseph Otieno, Pan-Africanist and Uganda People's Congress stalwart, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
For all the time adding value to this platform. But most of all, you, the listener, I want to thank you for the privilege of your company. Good night and God bless Uganda.